Okay, so let's get started. We got quite a few things on the agenda. I don't think we have anything to vote on, so, but we do have a quorum just in case. Let me share my screen and put the agenda up. 1 second here. Okay. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. First item agenda is always the approval of the minutes of the last meeting on June 2nd. Has anybody gotten a chance to look at them? Anybody have any changes they want to make? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Kevin
Who's
from the
that?
town of Hempstead seconds it.
Okay.
Do we still have to announce ourselves for the recording?
I mean, your name, well, I guess that those who are on the phone probably should, because otherwise your name doesn't show up, but
Either way, whoever wants it.
okay. I mean, the minutes will reflect, the names of the people, so I don't think we need to go through that, but. All right, so we have a motion and we have a second on the approval of the draft minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, they're approved. All right, the first administrative matter is the proposed shellfish density survey of the harbor. Actually, DEC calls it shellfish population survey, so that's what we're starting to call it. As you'll recall, we approved the hiring of Cashin Associates, I think for up to $50,000. Cashin came in with a proposal of $45,000. We haven't entered into the contract yet, but that is pretty much a formality. Cashin did apply to DEC to do the survey. DEC came back and said, we'll give you a permit, but only for the lower harbor, only the portion that is owned by the underwater land owned by the town of North Hempstead. We went back to DEC, we questioned them about it. Carol and I both have had phone calls with Debbie Barnes. We've had emails going back and forth. Basically, they first said that, well, they've never issued a permit before to do a survey on the state-owned underwater lands, which is not true. They've actually issued 4 permits in the past. Well, actually, at least 3. And we did respond to them, showed them one of the permits, gave all the reasons why. We have, a lot of valid reasons to do it, including it's been since 2008 since we had the last survey. We try to do it every 5 years. We were late doing this. We want to do the same station so we can see what's changed over time. We also want to see what the bottom lands are like, and so that if we do get the funds for the shellfish seeding through Congressman Swazi's office, we know where to put them. We also want to see how harvesting has affected the shellfish population, especially the smaller clams. Last year was the second highest year of harvest in the harbor since it opened, and that was despite the fact that many restaurants are closed, during COVID. So we're concerned that there, maybe the population, at least the younger ones, are not sustainable. Well, we don't know until we see it. We gave all those reasons. They didn't. I'm getting some feedback. I don't. So they basically came back and said they're reviewing it. That's going to the legal counsel. It looks like the gist of it is that they are afraid that if they give permission to do a survey on state-owned underwater lands, that somehow, somewhere, somebody in the future will try to make a case that this DEC no longer has jurisdiction over managing shellfish in Hempstead Harbor. I think that stems from a border dispute that's happening in Oyster Bay Harbor between Oyster Bay Town and and the state, where they disagree over where the harbor begins, and where for years the town leased underwater lands to Flower Oyster Company. It's been in court, it's been appealed several times, the town has lost, but it's still apparently on appeal. So we don't know where that stands. We're hoping to get an answer by today, but they still haven't heard from their legal counsel. So we are hoping to get a positive response. I mean, it doesn't cost the DEC anything, and this information should be valuable to them. But we'll see. We'll see what they do.
Okay.
Carol, did you want to add anything to that?
Eric, I just wanted to correct something. I think you meant to say that the last survey was 2013, 8 years ago. You said it was 2008. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, it was 8 years ago. We did 2008. We did 2013. No, but
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else on that? Did somebody else just join us?
No, it's Ian. I got off by mistake.
Okay.
Came back on.
All right. I'm just trying to keep track of, for the minutes. All right. On the 2021 member dues, we are, everybody has paid, with the exception of Nassau County, and it's possible Nassau County's paid. It's been in process, and I did send an email to the Seacliff treasurer today. I haven't heard back from her whether that money has come through, but it's a foregone conclusion and not untypical for this time of year. So thank you, Dan, for your efforts, and everybody should be paid very soon. And thank you everybody else for making sure that the dues got paid. On the Marcelino grant, hold on a second here. As you know, the grant is up at the end of this year. As of now, we have about 122,000 remaining out of the 250,000, so almost half of it's remaining. Nothing has been claimed. Well, nothing has been paid yet to Manhasset Bay Protection Committee, although they have submitted a claim to us, and we have paid them for some of the work that they've done. Recently, that check just cleared in the last day or so. And Friends of the Bay, which is handling it for the Oyster Bay Coastal Harbor Protection Committee, also has a lot of outstanding funds. A stumbling block has been the requirements that before DEC can reimburse anybody, there has to be a DEC approved QUAP and a DUAR for the year that they want, that the expenses are incurred. It's been a big stumbling block, as Carol can tell you. It's a lot of work putting that together. It's confusing. Even DEC and EPA were confused on it. They've asked us to put together a list of everything that we want to spend for the remaining funds before the end of the year. We've done that. Each of the groups has done that. We've sent that information to DEC this morning. That we have a meeting with them tomorrow via Zoom to discuss all of this, to see what they will fund, what they won't, and hopefully they will be a little bit lenient on what they will fund. We will see. I don't know if they would even entertain another extension on this grant. I will be glad if this grant ends at the end of the year, because it's been a lot more trouble than it's probably worth. Basically, we've spent almost all of our money, our share, the Hempstead Harbor Protection Committee. We have a little over $7,000 left. What we're proposing, what Carol's proposing to do, is to spend some of that on being reimbursed for the cost that the coalition incurred to hire a second boat during COVID to meet the COVID social distancing requirements. And also they had to hire a boat at the beginning of this season because the town of Oyster Bay's boat was out of commission. So we're hoping to get reimbursed for that. Carol would also like to purchase a laser printer, which would allow her to print the survey sheets on waterproof paper that she needs to take into the field, and also to purchase an underwater camera that may be able to help us, with detect illicit discharges. So we're hopeful that we can get those approved and then file for those. So Carol, is there anything else you wanted to add on that?
Sorry. Oh my God, this little sensitive microphone. No, that's it. That's it, Eric.
Okay. All right. As I mentioned, we applied to the House of Representatives through Congressman Swazi and to the Senate through Schumer and Gillibrand for $300,000 for shellfish seeding on the North Shore, which right now is Hempstead Harbor and Oyster Bay Cold Spring Harbor are the ones that definitely interested. It may town of Huntington may be interested in Huntington Bay, but that's not certain yet. But we're hoping to hear sometime soon. This proposal is in the federal budget, which is supposed to be approved in September. The Congress doesn't always approve budgets on time, and basically instead passes short-term, what they call continuing resolutions, to keep the old budget in place until they can finally pass a new budget. So we're hoping to get that hopefully soon, because in order to do this transplant, which would have to take place a year from now, in next fall of 2022, we would have to order the seed, survey the bottomlands, work out the agreements, talk to DEC, all of that. So, time goes fast, but, we hopefully will hear by the end of this year and be able to start the wheels rolling on that, assuming we get the funding. On the federal funding situation, in addition to that, a lot has been happening, and it looks like this may be a banner year for funding for harbors in Long Island Sound. Both houses of Congress have included $40 million for the Long Island Sound study in this next fiscal year. That's up from $21 million this year, almost double. And the fact that it's in both houses, is a very good sign. And I'm sure the president would approve that if that ends up in the final budget package. In addition, the Senate approved $105 million over 5 years for Long Island Sound. That still has to be passed by the House, but we were Carol and I were invited to represent the Long Island Sound Studies, CAC, at a press conference held by Senator Schumer on August 13th in Port Washington. And it was that was one of those really hot days so they kept the press conference fairly short, but it was good to see that moving. Steve, are you on? Oh, here he's coming in now. Steve Coaster's coming in. All right.
Eric, this is Kevin from the town of North Hempstead. I have a question.
Yep.
The camera is going to be property of the Hempstead Harbor Protection Committee, right?
If we purchase it, yes.
Okay. Because I didn't know how that would work if it transferred it to a coalition, which is a different organization.
Right. Yeah, no, the funds are the Hempstead Harbor Protection Committee's funds, so we would technically own it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And then also, as you recall, back in May, we had documented for Congressman Swazi the wastewater and drinking water infrastructure needs on the North Shore, which really are just a drop in the bucket, but we were able to document 1.24 billion in needs. That was done so that in this upcoming budget, there can hopefully be sufficient funds for wastewater and drinking water infrastructure. So we'll see what happens with that when the budget passes. And we also worked with Congressman Swazi in providing an exemption in federal law for the income taxation of grants for septic system upgrades. There is a provision that's been drafted in the bill. It's pretty broad. It would cover more than just septic system improvements. And we're hoping that that gets carried through to the final budget. So looks like a lot of good things happening on the federal front. So keep your fingers crossed. On the Seacliff Mini Mart, it was on again, now it's off again. So it's not going to be held again this year. So they've they sent my check back, so we will not be doing that. That brings us to water quality matters. So I'm going to turn it over to Carol to give us an update.
Okay, well, I'm happy to report that the 2020 annual water quality report has been completed, and a digital copy will be available on the Hempstead Harbor Protection Committee's and the Coalition to Save Hempstead Harbor's websites. For the 2021 regular season, monitoring season, which encompasses up to 21 stations, where we're testing, 14 of which have water column profiles. That also includes weekly bacterial sampling and biweekly nitrogen sampling at 10 stations. The bacteria sampling is at all stations. Just to give you a quick preliminary look at this point, and you have to understand, we're just trying to keep up with data entry and haven't had the time to take a deep dive into what the data is looking like. But so far, hypoxic events, which means dissolved oxygen of under 3.0 parts per million, started on July 21st, with most of the events occurring between that date and August 18th. Only 2 stations out of 9 had bottom hypoxia, and I'm really talking about bottom levels for all of this. Bottom hypoxia on 825, only two out of 9 stations, and only 1 out of 14 stations, one was hypoxic on 9/3. This is pretty much the same period and following the same pattern as last year. But this period seems to be not as severely hypoxic over the same period as last year. There have been no wide-scale fish kills, but there have been a few at a time seen. Bacteria results seem higher than the previous 2 years. Not all of the exceedances, and when we talk about exceedance, we're really using beach closure standards, because a lot of the outfalls are close to public beaches. And it's really just a way of giving people an idea of what the levels mean. So not all of the exceedances correlate with rain events. Most of the exceedances at the outfalls, especially at the Powerhouse Drain, which is station 14A, and all of the outfalls in Glen Cove Creek, had most of the exceedances, and they're typically, it's weird that it's switched to enterococci instead of fecal coliform. There have been brown charges again from pipe number 9. It was seen twice so far. There was also, in addition to that, 1 discolored sample from that pipe. A storm filter, Rocco could speak to this, was installed in early June, and we were hopeful it was going to make a difference. And in fact, right at the first sample that was taken, after the filter was installed, had clear water, but it had a high bacteria count. White flow that we've been seeing for years and years was also noted at number 10, the same pipe. That was about 4 times so far this season. Total nitrogen levels seem to be higher than the 2 preceding seasons, particularly for this was interesting for the STP station, number 8. We'll take a closer look after the full season is ended and determine whether this is truly the case and be able to make some comparisons with preceding seasons. It was a wetter 2021 season than the 2020, with about 12 inches of rainfall in July, greater than 7 inches in August, and we had 6.6 inches following the remnants of Ida. Everybody's experienced what's happened with those rainfalls from both of those storms, both Henri and Ida, falling within about a week and a half. And I hope everybody out there is on dry ground again. Around Seacliff there, and I should say around Hempstead Harbor, there were 7 landslides and or washouts that we saw around the harbor last Friday when we went. We wanted to push to get out there after that heavy rain. And that was pretty dramatic to see what had happened. A lot of you may have seen photos or passed by what happened to the powerhouse drain or the area, actually. It wasn't the drain itself, but it was the area between the Pocket Park and the fuel terminal, where the land nearest to the water and the bulkhead just collapsed. There was a collapse near the boat ramp as well, and then just landslides off the cliffs. In Seacliff, there was one off of Bay Avenue. There was another off of the cliff facing Seacliff Beach. One as you go into Glen Cove by the older townhouses, the hillside behind them slid down, and also one that you could see very clearly north of Morgan Park, and one that you could see easily also in Sands Point, below one of the old houses there. So it was really just unbelievable, that last storm. I'm sure all of you have experiences with that one. So we'll see at the end of the season how everything ends up, what the end result will be. And as I said, once we have a chance to really look at the data, analyze the results, make comparisons, we'll be better able to tell maybe what was going on. Unified water study, biweekly water column profiles are done along with a macroalgae or a macrophyte assessment. So that's continuing up through October. The Flupsy Water Monitoring Project, Steve could probably describe more about what's going on this season with the Flupsies, which is different from last season in that there have been oysters there, different sizes of shellfish, and they've been moved around. So it hasn't been a static situation. We've been monitoring all the same consistently at the stations that we had selected. And we're still seeing, for the most part, the marina is reflecting in harbor conditions. Scudder's Pond weir failure. Oh, well, before we even talk about the weir, it seems like the temporary fix we had done, Eric was there. We had volunteers there, some coalition people were there to lay sandbags to keep that weir up. Seemed to work, although during the storm, this last one, severe overflow coming from the upper pond, overflow over the lower pond, across the road. So on and off, the road has been closed, but I think that's primarily now a matter of trying to repair what had happened near the powerhouse drain. That's about it, Eric.
Carol, you gave a lot of good information on the the monitoring results so far. And it was a little fast for me to try to write everything down. Can you possibly send that to me and I can?
I can.
go over the minutes?
And again, with a caveat that this is very preliminary,
Yep.
so.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I know that Bruce had asked about the cost of doing the Scudder's Pond Weir the way we originally intended for when we did the remediation. We're going to put a 2-stage weir in there. And so I got in touch with Cashin. They sent me their analysis going back then, but just so you know, it's about 150,000 or so without the cost for construction oversight. So it's going to be considerable expense. So I will get that over to Bruce. He wanted that information. That brings us to the TMDL, and which is the total maximum daily load requirement that DEC is working on for Hempstead Harbor. We're one of the, if you'll recall, the initial harbors to develop the new TMDL that's hopefully fairer than the previous one. As part of that, the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, recently released a report on fecal coliform sources in Hempstead Harbor. And they had looked at basically 14 sites during summer, winter, during wet, and during dry seasons, dry spells, and surveyed them between June of 2018 and July of 2019. And I guess they've been analyzing it ever since, and now they've released a report. It's basically a study that uses microbial source tracking, which is a type of DNA analysis where they can tell whether the bacteria, the fecal bacteria, is from human, dog, waterfowl, or deer. So they looked at all those sites. They have some were at direct discharges along the harbor, and some were in the center of the harbor, so they could compare. They also did some sediment sampling, most notably at the powerhouse drain, to see what was in the sediment. And they also did a type of analysis of isotopes of nitrogen, so they can see if it was human sewage, etc. So it's a pretty thorough study. I did send it around. I did send around some the key takeaways, but basically the bottom line is that they found human and dog markers in roughly half of all samples. And in winter, they found waterfowl in all samples except one. And as you know, there were a lot of waterfowl overwinter in the harbor, so that's not surprising. The highest contamination they found was at Powerhouse Drain outfall. Second highest was at Skillman Street outfall in Roslyn. And the third highest was Glen Cove Creek. We really haven't surveyed the Skillman Street in the past, so that came as new information to us. But the others really confirmed what Carol's monitoring has shown, and gave a little bit more insight into that. What was interesting is that while they found human markers in the shallow water at Tappan Beach, they did not find fecal coliform. So the human markers really must be from nitrogen from the restroom facilities. But it was good that and they also did not find fecal coliform at Seacliff Beach. So those are two good signs. They also said there's strong evidence that the direct groundwater seepage is an unlikely contributor to bacteria levels. I guess the thought is that a lot of the bacteria is being filtered through the sand and not making it into the water.
Eric, this is
Yeah.
Kevin. Does that mean the septic program or the septic base flow is not an issue,
It's an issue for nitrogen,
but not for fecal coliform.
not from what they could see. And
Okay,
that's-
thank you.
That's not surprising. Even conventional septic systems, pretty much deal with a lot of the fecal coliform. And I guess nitrogen travels a lot more easily in water than bacteria does. My
Right.
understanding.
I thought the fecal coliform was a focus of the cesspool project.
That was part of it, in addition to nitrogen.
But I guess I'm saying is, I guess the mystery still goes on, no?
Yes, is what I would say.
Thank you. Somebody say thank you.
Because even for best management practices by the beach, anytime there have been issues at Tappan Beach or at Seacliff Beach, one of the recommendations, and actually particularly for that time, that Tappan Beach was closed for several consecutive days, and nobody could understand why. And one of the management practices was to have more frequent pumping of the cesspool, to rake the beach with a finer equipment, finer rake. And that was supposed to also have an impact, in terms of decreasing the bacteria. The whole issue of bacteria, I just find so difficult to get a handle on in terms of how do you deal with it. I mean, we've been trying to deal with these outfalls, and as Rocco, had expressed his disappointment after having a storm filter inserted in a storm drain where we thought that could alleviate the problem, and then you're still getting the high bacteria. And is that because the bacteria is replicating within the pipe? But that should have been taken care of, you would think, through all of the flushing of the pipe before the storm filters were put in. So there are lots of mysteries to this, and I think we need more resources brought in. It's just, this is one view with this USGS system, but I mean, it does confirm what we've been seeing in the creek and then also at the powerhouse drain. Same pattern for years. I've been saying that you always get the high bacteria results consistently from that outfall with direct samples, and the only time they diminish is when it, of course, is mixed with harbor water in a high tide. So there's nothing clear cut about this.
No, it's important to know. I mean, this is basically 1 year's worth of study, and not all that many sampling
Right.
results. As Carol knows, from year to year, things differ. You can go and take a sample in one location and come back an hour later and get very different results. So it's a snapshot. It's a more valuable snapshot than we've had in the past in terms of DNA analysis and all of that. But so it's I would say it's best. It's guidance. It's certainly not definitive, but it certainly gives us a little bit more a little more knowledge than we've had in the past.
I have a question, Eric.
Yeah.
What they said was that the bacteria does not travel through the aquifer. Isn't that the case? Isn't that what they're saying?
I don't know if they came out exactly and
You
said
said
that.
groundwater?
Yeah, they're not. They weren't finding it in the groundwater.
Well,
I don't know if they said it
groundwater,
doesn't travel. through
groundwater by definition is in the aquifer. And I don't think there's any confusion about that. Bacteria doesn't travel through, whereas the nitrogen is dissolved, it's in solution, and it doesn't get filtered out. But the bacteria does. The reason you get bacteria from septic tanks and cesspools is they overflow and they get into the surface stream. That's the way I understand it.
Right.
So, we've always agreed that groundwater doesn't transmit, bacteria.
Yeah, but I think this is a little bit mind-numbing. This is Kevin from Northampton, because the idea that base flow from the septic systems has not only allowed nitrogen, but also in our discussions has led to bacteria in the harbor. So
Well, that's because I'm saying that is well known that it's because they malfunction and they overflow into the streams and the surface water, not because
right, but you're talking about overflow is an overflow land flow, not base flow, not through the soil. So
That's
you're
right.
talking about overflow out of the septic system,
Yeah.
and that's not what the septic system program has been looking at.
Well, I think it's part of it, isn't it, Eric? To
Well,
try
one
to
of the
get rid
things
of
that they
these
said was
malfunctioning ones.
they suspect that in the powerhouse drain subwatershed, which is the worst, that there's bacteria that's getting through from septic systems, getting into the MS4 system, into the storm drain system. Now that could be either illicit hookups into it, or it could be cracks in the pipe and it's getting in that way. But they suspect that there's illicit discharges in the stormwater system.
Right. I just think this complicates the thing a little bit. It doesn't make it as clear as it was before. That's all I'm saying, is that maybe our problem is not necessarily just septic systems.
Well, I mean, they are finding human fecal matter.
Yeah, but Eric, you just said it wasn't to the extent they find traces, but it wasn't. I mean, unless I didn't hear you correctly, they found traces, but they didn't find to the extent that it was that problem. No.
I can't comment on the levels, whether you're calling them traces. I mean, I use the term markers. That's a DNA marker.
Okay, not traces, markers.
Yeah, a marker means they found that it came from human. It's not that doesn't deal with the quantity. It's just it is human, and they found it in about half of all the samples, or throughout the harbor and through summer and winter. So it's there is human bacteria getting into the harbor.
But they don't. Seems to me without any quantification, it's almost meaningless.
Well, they have numbers. I just it's in the report.
So
level.
It says that such and such a parts per MPN or whatever, the percentage of the bacteria was human.
They have MPN per 100 milliliter.
As being human.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they have the total MPN total coliform count. It's not,
Right,
and then they
from all
determine
sources.
whether there's human markers, dog markers, waterfowl. They didn't say that there's 1,300 MPN in one location. They didn't break it down and say
I don't see any. That's not helpful at all, really. It could be just a slight amount of percentage, 1% human and 99% whatever. But anyway, maybe there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I may have to take another look. I mean, some of these charts, are not the easiest to understand. So I basically, giving you the broad brush and what I thought were the key. Well, actually, here, hold on a second here. Yes, they did break it down by numbers. I see some in the back where they have the the tables that they summarized in the front. So
Okay.
there is information like that, broken down by species.
It would be helpful if anybody has an interest in reviewing that report, to summarize, and maybe a group of us could get together, because I think this is going to be really important as it relates to developing new pathogen TMDLs. And, the more we understand, the more questions we have that we have to get answered, the better place we'll be in terms of understanding what's going to happen with the pathogen. TMDL.
Yes, Carol, that's exactly where I'm going with this. You know, it enlightens us a little bit more as to maybe how we focus our management plans and how we go forward.
Right.
I have a suggestion that maybe at our next meeting, I invite the USGS to give us a 20-minute presentation on their findings.
I think that would be good. Because I'd like to ask questions also. I mean, the question we've been stumped by is why suddenly does the indicator bacteria switch? Where you go along for years having exceedances in fecal coliform, and then all of a sudden, over the last couple of years, we've been seeing the exceedances from Glen Cove Creek, from 14A, with the enterococci. You know, what does that indicate, if anything?
Right.
So it would be helpful. This is, you know, it's a very complicated area. I'm certainly not an expert in it. I just have questions about the data we're seeing.
Eric, do you think they'll be interested in coming, or will they dodge us? You know,
No,
bureaucratic.
they recently gave a presentation to the to a subcommittee of the Long Island Sound study.
Okay, sounds
So,
encouraging.
They have a, well, and that was broader than just Hempstead Harbor, but I mean, they did give a presentation, so they've got a PowerPoint already. So I'll ask them. Okay. Moving on, I guess the next item on the agenda is addressing bacteria in powerhouse drain subwatershed. I guess, you know, one thought that I had is that if they suspect that there's illicit discharges, maybe we could work on trying to get some funding to use underwater cameras to go up the storm drains and see if there's illicit discharges. But I have no idea what that would cost or if it's feasible, because there's so many different branches off the, you know, off the storm drain system. Okay. The Nassau County Septic Grant Program, it's really moving along. About a month in July, there was a vendor show, we call it a vendor show, in Oyster Bay with all the different manufacturers on hand. They brought the actual, you know, septic tanks there so you could look at them. We had over 100 people register to attend that. It was basically organized by Friends of the Bay and the North Shore Land Alliance. County executive came out. We had a number of local mayors, village trustees, citizens. It was a good turnout in the middle of a week, you know, in the middle of the day on a hot day, but that helped spur interest in the grant program. The grant program now has over 80 applications, of which 15 have gone to contract for installation. This is only since it was announced in May. The Soil and Water Conservation District, which is managing the program, has hired Justin Jobin. He's the person that ran Suffolk County's program. So he's been very invaluable to us on getting everything organized and everything. One of the things we're doing now is we're going out in the next week or two with what they call a solicitation of quotes, where the installers and the designers can participate if they wish, and they can provide us with their costs based on, say, a four-bedroom home, 6-bedroom home, et cetera, what the average cost would be. And then we would have, they would agree to hold those prices for probably a year. And then we can make that information available to the public, so they have, it makes it easier for the public to shop around and know who's, you know, authorized and who's licensed, who has a, you know, Nassau County Home Improvement license to install these. So the week of September 20th is National Septic Week. So we're planning on a few things that week, perhaps a press conference with the county executive. We will be having a virtual training session for the installers to let them understand how the system works better. But the system is, the program's really heading off. The Soil and Water District has received some additional funding from the county to administer it. As a result, the district has hired a full-timer just for that program. He started last week, and we've also hired another full-timer. And we have a new district manager. So we've got 3 new people at the district and really getting a lot back up to speed where we should be. Any questions on the septic grant program? I guess that sort of covers the next item is the Nassau County Soil and Water Conservation District. That's been really the main focus in the last few months is getting this grant program underway, and it's now we're going to start to be able to branch into some projects. Did I skip over the 9-element plan? I did. Dan, are you still on?
Yes, Eric, I'm here.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I can give a brief update on that. Over the summer, as I believe most of you know, we had another virtual stakeholder meeting where Dr. Christopher Goldberg from SUNY Stony Brook provided an update relative to the scenarios that the stakeholder group came up with. Some of the scenarios that were looked at were bioextraction, fertilizer usage, on-site septics, wastewater in general. Even though atmospheric is a big number, obviously, we can't run that. We ran into the model, but there's really no BMP to deal with atmospheric. And of course, on the South Shore, specifically the Bay Park to Cedar Creek conveyance project. So that was those scenarios were run through the model, and Dr. Goldberg gave a great, what I believe was a great presentation relative to that. If anyone hasn't seen that presentation, I might be able to get you a copy of that. So just email me if you haven't seen it already. I'll keep it more specific to the North Shore. The bottom line is, it looks like if we want to get to the target numbers in terms of nitrogen reduction, according to Dr. Goldberg's modeling of the scenarios, you're looking at the best scenarios would be for the alternative on-site septics to reduce nitrogen, or a combination of that with some sort of fertilizer reduction, however that may be. It seems like those 2 scenarios combined for the North Shore are really made the biggest dent relative to getting to your nitrogen reduction levels. So with that said, now that we've run the scenarios, the next step is, ultimately we're looking till the end of December to try to get a final 9-element plan. So between now and the end of December, there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done. The county needs to come up with some other information, more specifically the financial needs or goals to implement these types of scenarios. Best example I can give, okay, just like Eric greatly explained about the on-site septic system program, what are our goals over the next 5 years or 10 years? How many of these septic systems will we have put in 5 years or 10 years? How much money will it cost to run that program? So part of the 9-element plan is to look at each scenario, each nitrogen reduction strategy, and come up with a timeline to meet those goals and a financial need that would be required to meet those goals. So that's a pretty large undertaking. And I don't want to minimize also bioextraction. That's another one that was looked at that can make a big difference. As a matter of fact, I will be reaching out to the 3 townships, and I'll say it here. we're kind of looking to see where the towns and the protection committees are relative to their bioextraction plans, because that will be a role in the the final 9-element Nassau County 9-element document. So I'll try to get an email together. Maybe we can have a sub meeting, a Zoom meeting with the 3 townships and the protection committees, and try to get some information.
Yeah, Steve, are you on? Steve Coaster?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, are you able to talk about what the town is proposing to do with kelp in Hempstead Harbor?
Yeah, so as a town, we've been looking further into aquaculture as a form of bioextraction. We have a lot of things that we do with shellfish, but as far as Hempstead Harbor, we've been looking at potentially setting up kelp grow out lines, and I think that would hit on a lot of the things that you were talking about, Dan, for fertilizer reduction, bioextraction, and that type of methods to help the nitrogen levels. And yeah, so we basically want to try and hang some kelp out in Tappan Marina for now, and see how it will grow there, and potentially look to maybe do as much as we can to extract nitrogen in that way.
Okay, great. Thank you. If it's possible to send me an email on where you're at and where you propose to go, and that goes for anyone, Eric, or the townships, if you can just get me information as to what your vision is for bioextraction in your respective municipality or protection committee, that would be very helpful to gauge. But go ahead,
Steve,
Eric.
maybe you can respond to Dan, because you can also give information for Oyster Bay Harbor.
Yeah, so we're trying to do the same thing in Oyster Bay Harbor, maybe a little bit more open water. I mean, outside of the marina, when I say open water. But yeah, we're looking to do kelp there, and then also seeding shellfish is another big thing for us right now. We've been doing a lot with the hatchery and Flopsy systems.
Okay, great. That would be very helpful. And again, anyone else can provide information. And again, I probably will be putting together a formal email to the 3 towns and some of the protection committees to try to get additional information. But thank you very much, Steve. That'll be great.
Dan, I wanted to say also that the coalition's monitoring program in Tappan Marina includes picking up nitrogen samples biweekly, even in the marina. So we're starting to establish background levels, which
great.
Will give you a good foundation for determining what the effect is once the kelp lines are put in.
Could you send me an email, Carol, kind of describing that for me? And because we're going to, the county is trying to set up a meeting with Dr. Goldberg to go over the things I've been talking about, because his group is essentially writing the report. The DEC is providing the funding, and the county is obviously, providing as much information as possible with assistance from the stakeholder group. So this type of information would be very integral to get into the report.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One thing I wanted to add to Dan's report is that in Dr. Goldberg's presentation on August 9th, he did go over what each of the North Shore harbors would have to reduce their nitrogen by in order to meet the standards. And Hempstead Harbor is in pretty good shape. We would only need to reduce our nitrogen by 19.5%. That's compared to Manhasset Bay of 42.2%, and Cold Spring Harbor is 63.3%. And he felt basically that Hempstead Harbor could reach its target by installing some of the septic, the IA septic systems, and by reducing fertilizer use. So I think it's, it seems achievable in Hempstead Harbor.
And it seems like, according to DEC, when you hear reducing fertilizer use, it's not necessarily legislation either. I mean, they would look at a BMP for reducing fertilizer use through public education. They would consider that a strong component by which the protection committees can play a major role in getting that word out.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly is something we could do and have been doing. We could step that up. But certainly if there was state legislation that reduced the amount of nitrogen in fertilizer and how often it goes down, that would definitely help too.
Sure.
So, although that legislation seems to really not going anywhere because of
Pressure.
lack of consensus from basically one environmental group. Everybody else seems to be on board, but can't get them to budge. All right. Friends of Cedarmere, Tom?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Well, there's not a whole lot going on there, but there is something I noticed with this storm. There was absolutely no effect on our pond, whereas most ponds have turned, muddy brown. And I'm sure it's because we're not getting street runoff and it's spring fed. And also we put in a rain garden, which thanks to Eric and his group. And that took care of one of our parking lots that pretty much discharged into the pond. The other thing is the county recently redid the curbing. So I think all the water went down and ended up in the bay, but not through our through our pond. I mean, the levels were the same. The clarity of the water is even better than it was before the storm. And it's just something I noticed.
From what I understand, Tom, north of you there, up the road, there was a large sinkhole.
On what in Roslyn?
Yeah, going north of Cedarmere. There's a couple of ponds north of Cedarmere that we all know.
Yeah.
One of them somehow got to the roadway, and there was must have been a 20-foot sinkhole. So the county essentially, as a stopgap measure, filled it in. So we have to, like somebody said before, the county's running around like right now looking at all these washouts and road washouts.
I know
But
there was one
over there.
there was a huge washout on Mott's Cove Road, the South Mott's Cove Road. That's kind of a back road. But that gets all the runoff from the hill, goes all the way up to Glen Cove Avenue. And the gas pipes were exposed and so forth. I haven't seen any along Bryant Avenue.
Yeah.
But
No,
There is washout in Roslyn Pond Park after our rehabilitation. The extent is not known, but we had a lot of rain and a lot of things that we did got washed out.
Oh, that's too bad. Because Roslyn is an incredible basin. It's like a canyon. Long Island's, it's the second highest hill on Long Island, and it all rings around the three sides of the town. So they must have had a hell of a lot of runoff.
Yeah, it was over 7 inches of rain in that area. And also, speaking of powerhouse strain, LKMA is putting together a emergency design to repair that, and I believe next week, getting gabions installed there. So
that should be a bit of a help.
So the county's
future
working on it.
washouts.
Yeah. So next week you should see gabions being installed at that powerhouse drain washout area.
All right. I guess it brings us to municipal updates. Kevin, you want to go first?
Yeah, town of North Hempstead has nothing to report at this time.
All right. That's good. How about Flower Hill? Gary?
Gary Lewandowski. The Flower Hill, we have nothing to report this month.
All right. Who else do we have? Roslyn? Ian, are you still on?
Still here. I did see a huge pile of dirt, maybe a couple of 200, 300 feet north of the clock tower. I don't know where that came from, but it looked like some kind of a washout.
I saw that photo right by Village Hall there. It must have come right down that hill.
Yeah. I don't know where it came from or what it's all about, but it didn't look that. It looked pretty massive. So I don't know. Kevin really gave the report about the park. I don't know much about that either. So that's about it from Rockland.
Okay. I guess Adam had to leave from Roslyn Harbor, so no one's from Roslyn Harbor. Steve, Oyster Bay?
I'll refer to my comments before about our expansion of the Shellfish program and the kelp initiative.
Steve, what is the status of that red tide in Oyster Bay? Is that still around, or is it gone?
So that was actually in Cold Spring Harbor over there. And that was basically it was a diarrhea. It would cause diarrhea if a human would eat shellfish that was infected by it. But I believe that it's gone at this point.
Okay, that's good news.
Okay. Seacliff, or anything, Tom, that you know of?
Well, there's the two landslides that Carol mentioned. The one landslide was just on top of one that happened years ago, and nothing seems to happen with that to remedy it. I mean, absolutely nothing. I looked at they had sandbags to keep it from running down the driveway and over the cliff, and there was a big gap. So the other property, I think the owners of that property will take care of it, but that was pretty shocking. I think what happened is that the water came down the street, and instead of continuing, it jumped the curb and went down their property. And it took a lot of stuff with it.
That was the Bjorklands?
Yes.
And the first one you mentioned has the Bay Avenue?
Yeah, the Bay Avenue one. Yeah, that's been, what is it, 10 years now? Nobody wants to buy the property and take on the expense. They always back off somehow.
But there's another Bay Avenue washout.
But that was there was a contiguous, really. I believe it was the
2
property
doors
next.
down,
What?
different house.
Yeah, but the neighboring house. So it's just a worsening of the existing condition.
Oh.
That house always had a gash, and I think it got much worse.
Yeah, 2 doors down, which direction? South or north?
The one at the bend in the road used to be
Yeah,
Reichert, I
used to
think.
be the Weikert's house.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So that's not 2 doors down. That's the next door.
I think you might be right. Okay, Rocco, Glen Cove?
So the East Island Tidal Gates project is substantially complete. The tidal gates are working at this point. The plantings are in, so that's pretty much done. And as far as Crescent Beach, that's been a little slower. Fabco, I guess with the pandemic, has issues with putting the filters together or getting the parts that they needed. We really thought they'd be in by now. So that was a little disappointing. And the environmental plantings at Crescent Beach should go in. They should start going in any day at this point. So, and we're just waiting for some permits from the DEC at this point for the other parts of that project.
That sounds good. All right. Did I miss anybody? Nassau County, Dan?
Yeah, again, just running around dealing with these washouts that the county on county roads that we're responsible for. So we're quite busy. Also, I know Rocco, we've been trying to touch base. So are you around tomorrow by chance? Maybe
Yes.
I can call you. Okay. All
Yes.
right.
Yeah. Sorry. It really, as you know, it's been nuts.
All right. Yeah. I wanted to just talk to you about the Crescent Beach issue. Okay. We'll
Yes,
talk
yeah.
tomorrow. Thank you.
Yep.
I should say something also, Rocco. We saw that there were large pieces of debris, actually cabinets on Crescent Beach that had washed up.
On Crescent Beach?
Yep.
Wow. We know the road.
I can send you photos.
Okay. I know the mayor's been down there. The road that leads down to it, Valley Road, was really torn up in this last storm. So yeah, I mean, it's just, we got the amount of rain we got, as you all know. It was just tremendous.
Okay. Does anybody have any other business? If not, our next meeting will be on October 6th. I assume we'll still be on Zoom. That seemed to be the clear preference among all of you. I guess we got to see what happens with all this Delta variant, and now there's another variant out there, and we'll see what happens. But all right, if anything, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Nobody wants to adjourn?
I'll make the
I'll do
motion.
it, Eric. I was muted.
Second?
I'll second Dan Fucci.
Yeah, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Night, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye.
Good night,
Bye.
have a good evening.
Night, everybody.